Hello people, my name's Mike Concannon. I've been videoing weddings since 1982, filmed quite a few now. I've been using Sony's equipment for as long as I can remember, and from about 2005 onwards I've been using the EX1 and then NX200, which is similar to a Z280 except it's not full HD. Sorry, it's not 4K, it's full HD, and that's what I film in, is full HD. So I'm going to show you how I set my camera up for weddings. And when I say weddings, I film weddings in Ireland. It really is run and gun. You spend all day running and gunning from when the wedding starts at 1 o'clock. You don't get a chance to relax all day long until probably about 11:30 at night when you can go home. So your camera has to work. You can't go to the couple and say, sorry, I accidentally didn't press the button when you were walking down the aisle, or there's no room for error. You have to do things right, and my camera isn't set up as a nice happy camera for taking my time and being able to sit back and reshoot a shot again if I have to. It's to get it right first time. So my setup, okay, shotgun mic purely for when the rings are going on, just in case this priest doesn't switch the audio system on in the church or doesn't have the microphone with him. For the audio in the church, I have a Sennheiser receiver going into one of the XLRs, and I've put the Sennheiser transmitter on the speaker in the church, and that will get out all the audio that the priest says and the readers say. The light, don't think I've ever used it, but I've always put a light on the front of the camera. One day it's going to be dark in the middle of winter or something, and I'll need to switch it on. I do actually use it on my ZV1 for filming the dancing. So anyhow, how do I set the camera up, and why is this fluorescent green thing on there? There are 3 shortcut buttons that are important to me. There's one of them, and you can see I've got my little coded sticker on it. And I've put a bit of Velcro on, so it's got a different feel to the other button that I've got that set for the focus type. So this button, shortcuts, and this one, and this one, these are my important buttons for working in automatic, filming weddings. Now, I've just seen your ears pop up there, working in automatic, filming weddings. I've never worked in automatic, I've always worked in manual, and I was hoping one day when things got really good and AI became really advanced, that we'd have a white balance system that would work, and that we'd have an exposure system that would work the same as in the Nikon cameras, where you can look at the scene and just guess what the scene is and give you the correct exposure for it. Now, we're not quite there with the exposure yet, but you can work in automatic with this camera if you do things in a certain way, and it's nice working in automatic because the lens does ramp when you zoom in. When it ramps from 2.8 to 4.5, you need an automatic way of that being compensated for, and having auto gain switched on, it's a very helpful thing. The decibels do go up a bit as well if you've got the auto gain on, but you can go anywhere up to 20 plus dB, and it doesn't really make any difference at all. In fact, I've gone up to 30 and I can't really see that much noise, but at 20, no noise at all. So anyhow, okay, here we go. Oh yeah, and by the way, I must remember the auto ND filters, they are auto, and what's the point in having auto ND if you have it switched off and use the manual wheel? You might as well have it switched on auto ND, and of course, if you've got auto ND switched on, but you've got manual aperture, well, if you make an alteration on the aperture, it's going to make the auto ND compensate for the action that you've done on the aperture. So you might as well just be fully automatic, and I'll show you how I do it. Okay, I'll stop waffling now and show you how I do it. Okay, 3 shortcut buttons. This one is set for the neutral density filter to either be on or off. So if we give it a hit, it'll come into place, and if I give it another hit, it'll pop out. So that one is for, I'll switch the neutral density filter on if I'm outside. If I'm inside, I'll switch the neutral density filter off. This button here, first one, picture of a little screen on it, is because if I'm outside, I want the brightness of the monitor to be 12. if I'm inside, I want the brightness of the monitor to be 9. So that's the second thing I'll set for going either outside or inside. And then the last thing I'll set is if I hit the menu and we go to the first menu, I already have it set on page 3. And there I can change the amount of frames per second from 50 to 25 if I'm going from outside to inside. I'll go on to 25 frames a second. And if I'm going from inside to outside, I'll put it on 50 frames a second. So these 3 buttons, 1, 2, and I always do them in the order of this one first, this one second, this one third. So going from inside to outside or outside to inside, they're my shortcut buttons. Now, what's this? Why is there green here? Well, the reason there's green there is because when your head is up here where you'll be filming from, you can't see buttons that are underneath the camera. And this button's very essential. Well, it's a wheel, sorry. It's very essential. You need to know where it is. So when your head is up here and you're filming and you look down, if you've got some kind of indicator on here, you can see where this wheel is straight away. And what this wheel is, it's the exposure, auto exposure compensation. Now, the auto exposure does work as good as it works on any other camera, but you have to be able to either go up or down the exposure values and compensate for the mistakes that the auto exposure will make. So I need to be able to go darker or brighter, and the way that I do this is by this little wheel here, which just overrides the automatic exposure, brings it up or down, and so I can be filming away, and I can film away quite happily and be using that wheel as I would an iris control, and just let the camera do all its auto stuff. So the auto ND filter is working as it should in an auto mode. I'm purposely filming non-interesting stuff, by the way, because I don't want you to be distracted by the content of the film. I just want you to concentrate on what I'm trying to explain. The automatic mode of working, which I've never tried before, I am finding it works fairly well on this camera. It would just be nice if the compensation method, the method for going up and down, was on this wheel here. It'd be much more natural, or even as a second best, if one of these could be allocated. So if what you can allocate this wheel for, which is auto gain, auto exposure override, there are 3 things that you can allocate as shortcuts on this wheel. If in the future Sony would be good enough to let us be able to have those shortcuts on either of these 2 wheels, but preferably on the zoom, because, you know, we're using the power zoom, we're not using this zoom, or even on the focus, because we don't use the focus because camera focuses itself. It would be nice if we could have that exposure compensation on a wheel that's more accessible instead of a wheel that's underneath the camera and you can't see where it is, and you know, you have to do things like this to locate it. Now, of course, I know we're not all going to be operating in automatic, because like, who wants to operate in automatic? Of course, nobody. But when you zoom in, and we will zoom in now, the lens will ramp from 2.8 down to 4.5. And if you want that to be seamless, so it's not stopping down, you need the auto gain to be going up while you're zooming in and the lens is stopping down. You want the auto gain to be letting more light in. So you really need auto gain on. You need auto iris on as well. And what's the point in having the NDs, of course, you wouldn't use them inside, but if you were outside and you had the NDs on, wouldn't it be nice to just have them in auto mode and have everything working automatically, and then you just override the automatic shortcomings by compensating for the exposure. One thing that's been completely left out on this camera is auto exposure lock, which is, you know, you point to a place in the room where the light is good, and you just hit a shortcut button and the exposure is locked, and then you can come back to where, you know, where you want, say like the exposure there's all wrong, and if I could spin to another part in the room, hit exposure lock, come back here again, well, that would be really workable. That would be a great feature to have in this camera. But for now, I'm not talking about features that are missing. I'm just talking about features that we have but are in a bad place. And this, as I said, I've allocated it to exposure override. Would be nice if it was either here, where we could see where it is, or here, or here. Okay, so that's how I use my camera in auto mode, and it works fairly well. I've filmed a few weddings with it now since I've had it, and you know, I must say the auto works okay, but you have to be on top of it. You can't let it just auto expose by itself. You have to be in control. So there we go. Sorry, this video is not that well polished. I'm just giving you information. I'm not trying to make a nice shiny video to try and sell you something. Bye bye.